It starts with an empty desk, a quiet laboratory, an email inbox piling up with unread messages, and a calendar completely blocked off for his final thesis preparations. Then, absolute silence. Zamil Lyman and Nahida Bristie were exactly 27 years old. They had traveled nearly 8,000 miles from Bangladesh to Florida, carrying the heavy expectations of their families back home. As doctoral candidates at the University of South Florida, their work was focused on global solutions. Lyman was developing artificial intelligence models for environmental policy, while Bristie was engineering sustainable, carbon-neutral chemicals. On Thursday, April 16, 2026, both of these students vanished. Lyman missed a critical thesis meeting he had spent years preparing for. Almost immediately, panic rippled through the tight-knit Bangladeshi community living in Tampa. For two scholars who always define their lives by punctuality, a full day of radio silence was an impossible deviation. To their colleagues, the absolute lack of contact was the only evidence needed that their lives were in immediate danger. 8 days later, the search came to a devastating end. Police shut down the northbound lanes of the Howard Franklin Bridge, where they found heavy-duty utility bags discarded on the shoulder. Inside were Lyman's remains. He had been bound at the hands and ankles and stabbed repeatedly. 2 days after that, kayakers found a second bag snagged on a fishing line in the mangroves near St. Petersburg. The remains were so badly decomposed that investigators had to rely on DNA and dental records to positively identify Nahida Bristie. Two of Bangladesh's most promising scientific minds had been killed and discarded in their host city. The missing persons case was now a complex double homicide investigation, and police needed to figure out exactly how it was executed. Detectives quickly turned their attention to the Avalon Heights apartments, specifically to Lyman's 26-year-old roommate, Hisham Abu Garbia. When investigators from the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office interviewed him, Abu Garbia was entirely uncooperative. He also had a deep, unexplained cut on his left arm that had been recently stitched together. A third roommate recalled a specific detail from the night of the disappearance. He watched Abu Garbia use a heavy-duty cart to wheel several cardboard boxes out of his bedroom and toward the back of the complex. Police searched the complex's communal trash compactor. Hidden inside the crushing mechanism, they found Lyman's wallet, his shattered glasses, his student ID, and clothing soaked in blood. Armed with a search warrant, forensic teams sprayed the apartment with luminol. The chemical glow revealed two distinct, human-sized pools of blood soaking the carpet right next to Abu Garbia's bed. Detectives also found Nahida Bristie's campus ID locked inside Lyman's bedroom. The physical evidence proved the two students were attacked and killed concurrently inside their own apartment. To secure a first-degree murder charge, prosecutors needed to prove intent. They found it by tracking Abu Garbia's electronic footprint. Automated license plate readers tracked the route of Abu Garbia's car from the Avalon Heights apartments to the center of the Howard Franklin Bridge. This movement directly matched his cell phone pings, placing him at the exact disposal site between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. But the most disturbing evidence came from the suspect's smartphone search history. Abu Garbia had been consulting generative artificial intelligence to plan the logistics of the crime. 3 days before the murders, he typed a highly specific prompt into Chatgpt. What happens if a human is put in a black garbage bag and thrown in a dumpster? The chatbot replied that the scenario sounded dangerous. Unfazed, Abu Garbia followed up with tactical internet searches, asking whether a knife could penetrate a human skull and if neighbors could hear a gunshot through apartment walls. This digital trail eliminated any defense of a spontaneous struggle. It outlined a calculated, cold-blooded execution planned well in advance. The mechanics of the crime explain how it happened, but understanding the timeline leading up to it requires looking at the suspect's documented psychiatric decline. 3 years prior, in May of 2023, Abu Garbia was arrested for attacking his own mother and brother. During the assault, he screamed that he was the son of Mary and claimed to be a god. That violent episode resulted in a Baker Act hold, a Florida law allowing police to temporarily commit individuals for involuntary psychiatric evaluation if they pose a danger to themselves or others. Despite this severe history, He was permitted to lease an apartment with international students. Lyman and several other tenants had explicitly complained to complex management about Abu Garbia's aggressive, erratic behavior long before the murders took place. Management took no action. They ignored repeated warnings about a resident with a known history of violence, effectively leaving the students trapped with their eventual killer. There is a devastating irony in how technology sits at the center of this case. Zamil Lyman dedicated his life to training artificial intelligence to solve environmental crises, predicting climate outcomes to preserve human life. Meanwhile, the man sleeping one room over weaponized that exact same technology to optimize the disposal of human remains. Today, the victims' families and the University of South Florida community are demanding strict legal accountability. They are pushing for mandatory background checks and severe oversight for off-campus housing facilities. Lyman and Bristie traveled across the world to build the future. They succeeded in the most difficult academic tracks the university offered, but were ultimately left vulnerable by a housing office that had already been warned about the threat living next door.